and welcome to Puzzled Parents. I'm so excited to be here today. We have a very, very special episode. This episode is global. We are spanning two continents and representing three countries. I am so thrilled to be here. We all have come together to put together a book that will be launching on April 2nd, 2026, which is World Autism Day. Oh, so that's going to be awesome. The book is called Daring to Belong: Stories of Autism, Courage, and Connection. And I would like to welcome all the authors. Thank you so much for being here today. Candace, I'd like to touch on your situation that you've shared with us because not only did you have the diagnosis, but you were also dealing with a serious health issue. Tell us a little bit about, your journey, what that was like. And was it, I know we talk about things like ABA therapy and things like that, and we've all dealt with the insurances. We all know
Mm.
how great they are. Was it, did you find it was more challenging to deal with insurance as far as getting them to get his needs met versus your health issues? Like, kind of share a little bit about that if you would.
yes, so we had private insurance, and when Kason was diagnosed at 3, and I was diagnosed, 24 hours, my life completely flipped upside down. And I struggled more with insurance covering his services than they did mine. My cancer treatment, like some of the medicine was $75,000. They didn't even want to cover Kason's speech and OT therapy. They fought us tooth and nail, did not want to cover it. It was absolutely, it drained me more than anything else. I would walk in and they were like, well, you automatically have this diagnosis of cancer. We have a strict, it's confirmed with labs, x-rays, biopsies, everything. And they were like, again, I live in Southeast Missouri. There's not a lot of resources. Even still to this day, I drive an hour to take Kason to speech and OT private at Kenny Rogers, and they are absolutely wonderful with Kason. But before we could get in there, there was a waiting list. So I was having to take him to Cape, and Cape is an hour and a half from us. And I took him every Friday, and we did ABA first. They absolutely refused to pay for ABA therapy. And then we went to speech and OT after that. And at first they were like, oh, yeah, we're going to pay for it. But then they was like, oh, well, there's not enough diagnosis to say that he really needs this. So then we were having to drive 4 hours to St. Louis just to go to the children's hospital and have a um, speech language developer test Kason and do all these um, evaluations on him. And well, what can he talk? What can he say? We had to do hearing tests. We had to do just all different evaluations just for them to even cover part of his services. And I was
Well, of
like,
course, yeah, you're having to do all that while you're not
while I'm trying to
feeling
do
well. And
treatment
yeah,
and surgeries,
yeah,
and
wow.
I'm sitting here fighting on the phone with them while I'm getting waiting in the lobby for a biopsy. And I'm like, they're calling me and we're like, oh, well, we're not going to pay for this. And I'm like, okay, well, why not? Because he needs it. He needs these services. And I
Mhm.
know the sooner I can get him involved in getting these services, the better off he's going to be in the future. And
Mhm.
it was an absolute nightmare. Oh yeah, we're going to pay for $75,000 worth of medicine for you, but we're not going to pay for his speech and OT. I had gotten so many like denials for his services. They sent me I remember one time they sent me a bill for $8,000 for speech and OT. And I was like, why am I getting a bill when I pay my copay every time? And they're like, oh, your insurance denied it. And I was like, oh, that's great. I'm going through cancer treatment, but thank you for this lovely bill.
Yeah.
So
So
it
where are
was
things now? How are things now? What
now he goes to Kenny Rogers and he is doing fantastic. We've been going there for 5 years now, I believe. I believe we hit five or six. I can't remember. Um, and they are absolutely wonderful with Kason. Um, he goes every Friday still. We leave school at lunch and then we go straight there, do our therapies, and it's absolutely amazing. He also does speech and OT through school. He does go to special education school, and we transition into public school for a few hours during the week. Um, and we just hit middle school, so we started a new school, and I was absolutely petrified. And um, him, nothing. He walked in, just left his aide, and was like, "Bye." And he doesn't see himself as different. He goes in to every activity now with confidence. He is, hey, I'm Kason, and you can either accept me as who I am, because my mother is my everything, and you can accept me or you don't have to. But he is his own person, and he doesn't
Mm.
see himself as different at
Lisa,
all.
I think you can kind of piggyback off of that with the work you did. I know we talked about before where you kind of had that different, not less thing with the population you were working with and the activities you did with them. Do you mind sharing that? And of
Yeah,
course, you can chime in
absolutely.
too, Candace, whatever.
I think you're talking to me, right?
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I see individuals as, being different is beautiful. And that's kind of what inspired my books. But just hearing all your stories, I'm working on my school psychology license and interning, and I see a really big difference between elementary school and high school. And I think we still have a lot of work to do. And that's really what inspired my books to give that resource, give that different view of what autism is to families. And I always encourage, because one of the positives about social media is that support. So I always encourage families to, check out those support groups, check out those different pages on Facebook or Instagram, because it's really a game changer. I sat in a meeting yesterday where there were so many of us. It was overwhelming for the parents, but it was just so heartwarming to see that support. And then I think about the second school that I work in, and they don't get that there. It's very different. And, I think from, just the teacher's point of view, we need to be that support. We need to be there for them. And we need to push the narrative of that being different is beautiful, not less. And I think that's something this world, just period, has a lot of work to do, is that we need to make it okay to get the diagnosis. Just like, you were saying with your son, Candace, like, who cares? This is who I am. What we should just accept it. What is the big deal? I don't like the word of normal, and I don't think anybody is weird. I think we all have our own little quirks and our own person, and that's how it should be. Resources should be easy to get. You shouldn't be denied by insurance for any reason. And we need to do better with our trainings too. I was just talking about this with my students about how, people still mess up with diagnosis, and that's not okay. And talking about how adults are getting diagnosed more often now, and it makes their life make sense. But there's also the underlying question of, why are they having to wait till they're adults? So, that's what really drew me to this book, is that we are getting more resources like this. We are getting more individuals bringing to the forefront the business that they have, that they're making these businesses specifically for individuals that have autism, that have these beautiful differences. I don't like saying weaknesses either. And I think that's what's really amazing about being a part of something like this, is we're seeing more of this come to light. And that's what we need. We need more awareness, because that's going to create acceptance, especially if they go from kids to adults that are
Yeah.
accepting. That's going to decrease bullying. And that's what we really need to see more of, and it's really
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
shame that we don't push things the way we should. And that's really where my platform is, and why I love all of this. I love Susan's, show, hearing about a docuseries that I'm definitely going to go check out. Why I created, my podcast so we can get more of this out here. Why, the kids children's book tour was created to create more of this, because we need to look at autism as something that, okay, you have autism, great, cool. Tell me more about you. Getting the diagnosis as something that is okay, not seeing a label as negative, because once you get the diagnosis, this whole world opens up. So
Yeah.
that's more of what we need. And it's so heartwarming to hear your stories and see that we're creating this world where we have more of that. We still have a ways to go and, a lot of work to do, but I really feel like we're on the right path. And, that's why I called my podcast No Limits, because I tell my parents, your child is only limited by you, what you tell them they can or can't do. Because even if you put them into soccer and, they have autism and it doesn't work for them, that's the same as a neurotypical child. Not everybody's good at soccer, not everybody's good at baseball, not everybody's good at dance. But why is it such a big deal for a child with autism to go try out for something like that? Let them go and do it and see if it's for them. If we look at it from that point of view, we create such a difference when it comes to the view of autism. And that's where I'm coming from as a professional in the field, and why I love hearing all of this. And I really hope we get to a world where it's in that place at some point.
I
Um,
love that so
um,
much. Yeah. Yeah. And
to oh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
to comment on that. So I had someone tell me, we were talking about my kids, and I was like, yeah, my, youngest was diagnosed with autism, and she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, why? He is brilliant. I'm like,
Exactly.
my son can take, just for instance, Legos and put together masterpieces. I
That's
cannot keep two Lego bricks together. I cannot touch his Legos.
exactly.
He's like, Mom, don't touch them. Because, like, I moved one and I said, oh my goodness. And he's like, oh, Mom. He's like, it's okay. I'll fix it. And I'm like, okay. Because I can't keep
Exactly.
two Legos together, but he can look at a pile of plastic little bricks and come up with some of the most amazing things. I said, my
Mm.
son, there's nothing to be sorry about. I said, my son is
Exactly.
who he is, and he is a rock star, and he will go into any room and he
Exactly.
will light it up. And I said, he has the biggest personality. And I'm sure he gets that from me because I have a very large personality. I love being on stage. And he will get on stage with a microphone and he will sing his little heart out.
Exactly.
And he might not know every word, but he's going to let you know he is there. And he is
Exactly.
very vocal, and he is, I'm a rock star. I am who I am. And this is my personality. And we're going to be friends, or I'm going to go find
Exactly.
another friend. And
And
that's,
that's how it should
Yeah.
be. Exactly. And that's what we need to focus on. Like my illustrators, half of my books are illustrated by individuals with autism. And just like your son, I can't put two books together either. And that's what we need to focus on, is that kind of like engineering mind that he has. The illustrators I work with, they're so talented. I can't, everybody asks me, did you do the illustrations too? I'm like, no, I can't draw for my life. But these amazing individuals with autism can, and that's what we need to focus on. Why are we focusing on these geniuses who are incredible at math, incredible at drawing, incredible at writing, but they don't have the diagnosis? Why don't we focus on that part of individuals with the diagnosis too, and show them as geniuses too? Because that's what's really beautiful, is the things that make us different. And I love that about your son, Candace. And I really hope he grows up to be an advocate as well, and comes on and do podcasts and puts it out there, because those are the individuals that are really going to make the change. And that's what I tell my students. And I'm like, I don't care if I'm preaching to you, but you guys are the ones that are going to make the difference. And that's what we're here to do, is really put that in the minds of the children, of the college students, of the high school students, to get out there, celebrate their differences of themselves, their friends, and really make that change, because that's where it starts. They need to have these kids grow up with that mindset and really show, like, hey, just because I learned differently doesn't mean anything negative. And I love that. And that's where I feel like we're kind of moving towards. And that is what is so hopeful and incredible to me.
But
Yeah.
I think Julie is kind of the personification of that. Like we're kind of talking about that, and here's Julie rocking it, you know.
Sure.
And I love that you're here, and I love that you are being that spokesperson, saying, "Hey, this is my story. This is me," and take it or leave it, just like Candace said. I do want to touch briefly on something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily talk about that came up a little bit when Candace was talking. Um, I don't know about your son, Candace, but my daughter was that very social, chatty, chat you up kind of person. But one of her challenges is being able to maintain and set personal safety boundaries.
Mm.
And she never established that. Like she never met a stranger. Everybody's my friend, and even when she was older, I couldn't leave her by herself because she would just open the door for anybody, or strange man at the edge of the woods, help me find my puppy. Oh sure, what's your dog's name, what do you look like? Even now today, as a young adult, she will get in the car with strangers,
Mm.
and it's terrifying. And I've been talking stranger danger since she was old enough to understand it. So how do you handle it? How do you deal with
Oh,
that?
can I speak on my perspective on that? So
Absolutely.
So yeah, like I mentioned before, I was bullied as a kid, and but I think like that kind of helped shape me. I mean, I'm not saying every kid needs to go out there and be bullied to be a stronger person, but I think when I came into this world, I think I was very trusting, and I think I was very naive about people, and you know what I mean. So, and maybe I needed to kind of learn like how to have a thick skin to come out of my shy shell, and also like not learn and learn not to trust people. So when I was going through that, I was, you obviously feel like you're a target, and you're like, why am I being relentlessly bullied by a bunch of kids? But then, looking back now, it taught me like, okay, this taught me to like, not to trust people. Not everybody's going to be nice and have your best interests at heart. And you have to, if you want to make a difference in this world, you have to grow a thick skin. So it is something that even when I went back to special care counseling, and I was learning how to deal with kids with autism, and they said that kids with autism tend to be very trusting because they're not aware, they're not self aware of the stranger danger and all those boundaries and whatnot. So I think how to deal with it is just it is trial and error, and I had to learn some bad things too. Like I put a lot of trust in some people, and they turned their backs on me, or they basically betrayed me and all that. So
Mhm.
I think it's just really like, talking to somebody, and maybe just learning to keep to yourself, and just learning to grow that thick skin. It's not easy, but as a parent, you still have to instill that in them, that you can't trust everybody, and you're gonna make
Yeah.
mistakes along the way. You're gonna trust the wrong people, but you really got to hang in there, because, and like Candace was saying, like, okay, you don't want to be my friend, then I'm gonna go find somebody else, somebody else who's gonna appreciate me for who I am, and appreciate me for the way I think. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just giving you my perspective of how when I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
growing,
No, I love
and
it.
it
I
was
love it.
like, you
Yeah.
know so
It's very challenging though, especially I think when they become adults, because my daughter had gotten her first apartment and she did really well for about 2 years, 2.5 years maybe. And then she let her friend from high school move in, and she moved another person in. And it got to a point where they were actually exploiting her and abusing her.
mm,
And they had isolated her from us. They didn't want us to go there or talk to her. And it was really, really rough. And it took about a year to get her to see, hey, these people are not your friends. They're not treating you right. It's not okay what they're doing to you. My daughter, who was very independent, she would go to Walmart herself, get her groceries and things like that. Now couldn't pick anything out in the grocery store because she was afraid she'd get the wrong thing and they would yell at her. And it took a long time. She didn't want to hear. She thought they were her friends. And finally, one day, she reached out. She said, "Hey, is that offer to come home still available?" I was like, "We'll be right there." Um,
you
you
experience a
know,
lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly when you're dealing with a disability, because I think
yeah,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
universe is trying to open up your eyes sometimes and telling you that, okay, you're gonna have to take in the bad with the good like everybody else. But I think we just suffer the most because of our good heart and, just wanting to fit in and just wanting to please everybody. And I was a people pleaser for such a long time, and it's only like in recent years I said no. I learned to say no, and I learned to just go with what I'm comfortable with and be in rooms where I'm comfortable and not have to please everybody and show up even where I feel like it's an uncomfortable space. So it does take a learning experience and it takes a lot of trial and error, but I mean, it is definitely something that we can overcome. And as having the right network and support system helps as well.
I think one of the areas that's really that kind of connects to this is as a parent knowing how much to support your child as they go into adulthood, but knowing too when to allow things to just work themselves out. That's a struggle, has been a struggle for me because with my other children, I knew what to do, but with Anthony, it was different. And it
Yeah.
was really hard for me to allow him to experience things like learning to drive or going to college. Those things were just they were just really scary for me.
Yeah, it can be very, very scary. That's the thing. And I know all parents as their children turn over into adulthood, it's a completely different experience. There's parenting your child, and then just because they become an adult doesn't mean you're not their parent, but it's a completely different ball game, and it's challenging, I can tell you that for sure. But
Um, I recently took me and my significant other, me and him decided that we were going to commit to each other. And so we had to have the discussion. I was like, there might be a possibility that Kason lives with me for the rest of his, our lives. And that was a big discussion that we had to sit down and have prior to us, committing to each other. I was like, are you going to be okay with that? Because there's no empty nest. There might not ever be that, just me and you. And that was something that we had to sit down but him and them two are like two peas in a pod. They're best friends. When you ask Kason who his best friend is, it's Jeremy, and he'll tell you that. And they sat outside in the garage and did a model last night, a model robot. I couldn't have helped him because that's just not in my brain path. So I would have just been like, let's just go buy a robot. But that's something that they did together. And that was a discussion that we had to have. What is Kason's adult future going to look like? And when I'm
yeah.
asked that and on assessments, I'm like, I can't answer that because we've made great strides between the ages of 7 and 12, but are we going to continue to make big strides to where he's ever able to live, like y'all said, some of y'all's live in an apartment attached to your house? And I'm like, is that in our cards, or is he going to have to stay living in the same environment as us, or is he going to be able to have his own place and me just keeping a check on him? And sometimes I can't answer the question. I just have to think about
Mhm.
just
One day
what's
at
going to
a
be best for us.
Yep.
Yeah,
One day at a
yeah.
time.
Yes,
I
that's
do
I'm
think it
like,
is important to ask that question. What happens when they're an adult? What happens when something happens to me, and making sure that you have plans and contingencies for that, but not just. I always tell people it can't just be in your head. It has to be in a document that speaks
Mhm.
for you. Because if you're not here, something happens to me. If I go out and get in a car accident and I'm not here, who's going to make sure that my child
yes,
has what
that's
they
on my
need?
list is to get a legal document because I'm
Yeah,
like, I
yeah.
need a plan, a backup plan, a backup plan after that, and a backup
Right.
plan after that.
I
Right.
think that's
That's so
something that
scary to me,
everybody,
though.
I
Go
think
I
ahead.
was
that's
just
something that
saying
everybody's going to have to look out for because what happens to all of our kids, our young adults when we're all gone?
hmm
God forbid we go out tomorrow and there's a car accident, my husband and I are gone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter is there. she knows she's stepping into the role. But, like even still, there's still things that mom does that nobody else is going to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And again, and where we live, it's such a small community. And that's why Scott's here. He doesn't want to live with anybody else. I'm sure he's capable of doing that. If he wanted to, he can pick up his own groceries. He changes his own sheets and does all of his own laundry, makes his own meals. So we're teaching him all those skills. But he's happy being where he's to. So do I force him out? No, I'm not forcing him out if he don't want to. But
Mm.
then again, what happens, right? If I could get him somewhere where, say, he'd be comfortable and he can live and he can function, but again, how does he do that if he can't work 8 hours a day and work a full-time job? There's a lot of there's a lot of uncertainty for parents when your kids leave school and move into the real world, we'll say. Because in
Mm.
school they're protected by us, they're protected by the resources people and anybody else is coming in to uplift them. But then when they get out of school, and I know everybody's maybe different, but for me, I live in a community of 900 people. There's a couple stores and that's it. So I have to build something. Like the idea for me was to build something for Scott. But
Yeah.
now my fear is what happens when I'm finished. I'm 30 years older than him. Well, so that means I got to work till like I'm 90. So so that he'll retire. But I mean the whole thing is putting that in place now because I tell you, I live that fear every day, and I'm sure as you guys do too. And a lot of
Mm.
parents I've talked to in the last couple of years since we've been doing this have said to me, "Oh my gosh, I never thought about that. Our kids have all
Yeah.
went away to university and school, and they're living their own lives, and
Mm.
I'm not. I am, but I'm not. Like I can
Yeah.
leave Scott now. He's independent in that way. My husband
Yeah.
is here. We work in tag team kind of thing, right? But again, what happens when we're not?
Yeah. We call it in physical therapy, we call that supported independence or modified independence. So I think that's a lot. And Tasha, I think you were going to touch on that too, right?
Oh, I was just going to say it really is very scary thinking about what happens after the fact. Caleb doesn't have any siblings, so it's just him. So when I think about if something, God forbid, were to happen to me today, who's going to care for my child the way that his
Yeah.
mama cares for him, you know? So it is really scary, and I have had some conversations. So I have something in place. I do need to put it in writing though. So
Yeah.
like Candace, that's my next step is getting that done. But sometimes I'm just like, I don't really want to think about that.
Mm.
But it
Yeah.
is different. It is different thinking that way, just like Trina said, talking to other parents, and they're not that concerned about it. They're not concerned about if I
Yeah.
leave today, will my child be able to go on and be independent? It is totally different. So I definitely understand that.
I'm
And
curious.
like Candace was saying too, like it if your child is not going to be able to do that, that's the rest of your life. That affects you too. And
Mm-hmm.
I think some parents will feel a little guilty because as your kids get older and they're starting to be a little more independent and maybe they can make it in a supported living thing, that can stir up things in us as parents, like that we maybe put on the shelf, you know. For example, for myself, I didn't really date when I was raising my daughter because she needed all my attention. But she got a little older, and I was like, well, maybe I can do that, or going back to school, or starting a business, or traveling, or it's you feel guilty if you want something for yourself because you feel like,
Mm.
well, they need me. Does that mean they're not as important to me? You know what I mean? I'm not
Mm.
putting that exactly in the right words, but I think I think we feel more guilty for wanting something for ourselves because they need us. Has anybody felt like
Yes,
that?
definitely, definitely. Like you mentioned, when we were just chit-chatting that I do pin up and I do pageants, and it's something that I'm passionate about because it helps my community, helps me raise money for other charities and stuff like that. And so like when I leave, I'm like, oh, I'm leaving Kason. And I'm like, but I know I have the people in place that love him just as much as I do. And his aunt has been his second go-to mama. She was there when I delivered him, and she's had him since he was a week old. She watches him while I go to work, and she is, his other, you could ask him right now, hey, do you want to go to your aunt's? And he'll be like, yeah. And, she helps me tremendously. And then I have my mom and I have my mother-in-law, and I have all these people that are together to help me with Kason, but I still feel guilty leaving him anytime we go anywhere.
Can I add something? I wanted to know, like, for because there's so many different people from different parts of the world. I'm wondering, like, how is it over there where you are in terms of facilities and resources? Because here in Montreal, Canada, we have a lot of places for, like, let's say when they're adults. We have one called the Miriam Home, and it's basically like an outpatient where they could go and they'll get assigned with like an integration aid or a special care counselor, and they will learn like travel skills. They will learn like life skills and stuff like that. So, and then also in schools, we have integration aides, we have shadows, we have people that to work specifically like with children with special needs to help them integrate into mainstream schooling. So I'm just curious for the parents, like what types of resources do they have, and like do you use them, or I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Like
here in the US, every state is different. In Virginia, we have Medicaid waiver programs where if they don't qualify for regular Medicaid, you can apply for the different waivers, and there's different levels for that. But the parent is really carries the burden for that. First of all, they have to know that. Second, you have to know how to navigate it. And it's very difficult. Um, so
I have a really good example to share since I've just had a recent experience with the waiver program. Anthony took some classes with mixed martial arts, and he wanted to get his own punching bag and his own weighted jump rope. And so we talked to his case manager probably a year ago about that. And she put us in touch with a company that was going to do a behavioral assessment. That took about 6 months. Now we're finally linked with the company, and they've decided he needs a recreational assessment instead. So, in the meantime, we went ahead and got him one. We got him his own punching bag. But it's just insane that everything has to be that difficult. And I hear that from others here too, that it has to be so difficult to be able to access the resources that are supposed to be out there.
Can I speak to the guilt piece of it? And again, I am not a parent of a teen on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Can
we come to that in just a moment?
Oh, sure.
I know there's several ladies that have to step out, and I just want to thank them so much for being here. I know I've said it 100 times at the beginning, but what we are doing is global impact. And we are the voices for this community, and it's our heart and passion that's going to help move the needle in that genre. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming. If you can stay a few more minutes, we can certainly chat a little bit more. I'm totally fine with that, but I did want to make sure I thank everybody before they have to step out. Thank you so much, guys. All right, if you have to go ahead and drop off, and then anybody who wants to stay a little bit, we can just kind of continue our conversation. And whenever you have to go, that's fine. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about the guilt. There's a lot of language there. The guilt meaning that it typically would mean that you're doing something wrong, and you're certainly not doing something
Mhm.
wrong. And I also invite you to kind of put a different lens on when you're going to do something for yourself, to be very vocal about it with your kids because you are now giving them permission to do something for themselves, to put themselves first. And oh, look at my mom going off and doing this, and look at my dad going off and doing this. And it empowers them, even if it's very invisible as a disability, it can be very empowering. And I mean, every person needs self-care because
Yes.
and your version of self-care might be doing photo shoots, it might be doing whatever. If that's your version of self-care, you need to make that as much a priority as your kid because number one, your health, your mental health, your physical health is going to depend on it. But in the other sense, you are showing your kids that you have the permission to do something for yourself. And I know a lot of kids and adults on the spectrum become, as Julie said, people pleasers. And
Hmm.
this will demolish that people pleaser. I come first. I need to ask for what I need. And it's not always just help at school. It's, oh, I might need some time in the corner by myself for some silence. I need you to turn off the noise. I need whatever it is, giving our kids the permission and setting the example that you can ask for permission for
Hmm.
yourself, I think is vital. I think we need to shift that. I need to. I would love for you to think about shifting that whole guilt feeling to that.
Yeah, I agree. It's difficult. It's very difficult. I remember when my daughter was 10 and I started going to counseling and she said, "Well, what do you do for fun?" And I was like, "Well, I take Kayla here, I take Kayla here, we go to this, we go." She says, "No, no, no. What do you do for you for fun?" And I was like, take my daughter places." And just coming to that realization that we do need something just for us. And once I started doing that one thing just for me, it really filled my tank up to then pour into her and pour into others. So I agree with that.
Someone told me the other day, they were like, you don't do anything without checking to make sure that Kason schedule is taken care of first before you even agree to anything else. You look at case and stuff. And I said, absolutely. I said, he's my my first concern. And then it's me. So and and I do get overwhelmed sometimes because we have such a busy schedule. But I said, you know, I know he needs me and he needs me to do his schedule so we can do what we need to for him to succeed later on in life.
Yeah. Does
Candy,
anybody have any closing statements or anything you'd like to share as we kind of wind down today?
I don't have a closing statement, but I did want to share. It made me think about my son when Candace talked about her son loving singing and dancing. And
Mhm.
my son is the exact same way. And it's so funny because I've always known that because he's always singing and dancing at home. But a lot of times there's a different version that we see of our kids at home because they're comfortable, they feel safe,
Mhm.
that other people don't see outside the home. And so I remember his first year post graduating, where he was going back to school to finish out his years that he's eligible until 21. And so his teacher sent out an email and she said, we're about to start diversified practice. And I know we have a lot of new students and new parents involved in the classroom now. So here's some videos for you guys to look and see past performances. I said performances. So I go and I look at the video, and it's a dance team. Now I've heard of Diversified the whole time that boy was in school, but I did not know it was a dance team. And so I said, Caleb, why didn't you tell me Diversified was a dance team? He's like, I don't know. And I said, well, do you want to be on the dance team? Because I know you love to dance. Now, mind you, this is a child that gets very like socially withdrawn when he comes face to face with people. He's looking away from you, avoiding eye contact. He's barely wanting to speak. I always tell people, let him come to you first. So I noticed that he was starting to get filled with so much anxiety. And I said, just think about it and let me know. And he says, okay. So the first day of practice, um, I noticed that he did not come home on the school bus. And I was like, um, what is really going on? So his teacher texts me and she's like, Caleb's staying for practice for Diversified. I'm so excited. I'm like, we were supposed to talk about that. Like, you were supposed to come back and say, like, hey, mom, I want to actually do the dance team. And y'all, it's been such a blessing to watch him perform. And I found out what I did not know, because again, I'm used to him dancing at home when it's just him and myself. But this dude is a whole performer. He is a performer. He got in front of these people, and the first time I watched him dance, I literally cried. Just watching him completely command the floor in a room filled with kids, because they typically dance at the pep rallies, and pep rallies are chaotic, right?
And
Mhm.
loud.
Loud, chaotic is just total chaos. And he got out there and danced and danced and danced. And I've just watched him over the years since he's been involved on the dance team. And it's been so beautiful to watch him just kind of flourish in that whole dance space. And even one summer, he goes to camp and they had their end of camp celebration, and they were doing karaoke. So he sang his song, Whatever It Takes. That's the song he really likes. So that's the song that he sang. And then one of his friends got up to sing, and he got shy and he couldn't finish his song. So Caleb goes up, grabs the mic to help him sing, and ended up taking over the whole song. I was like, that's my child.
It's amazing sometimes. Like, I know when my daughter was transitioning to high school, we had a tornado come through and it tore out one of our middle schools. So they had these education trailers set up in the parking lot of high school for eighth grade. So they went into the high school for a couple of classes, and then the rest were in the trailers. And she came home one day. She said, I want to do the Navy Junior ROTC next year. And I'm going, what? What? You want to do the military thing? She's like, yeah. And I was like, I don't know about that. But I said, okay. And she loved it. She did great for the first 2 years. And it was amazing because it really gave her that sense of, this is where I fit. These are my people. This is where I belong. I'm part of this group. And I think having that experience made a huge difference to her whole high school experience. And, I think giving our kids room, like you're saying, to really have that place to grow and expand and what interests them is really important. And she just blew me away.
This summer, Kenny Rogers will be putting on their basketball team again. And I didn't know that they did that because, again, they're 45 minutes from us. So last year was their first year, and they let their people that go to the center participate in basketball and cheerleading if they want to. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did not know y'all did this. And she was like, yes. And I was like, put Kason on the list for next year. He's been asking to play basketball. He plays it at school with the older kids. And I was like, put Kason down. Just go ahead and put him down. And everybody's like, you're going to drive 45 minutes for him to play basketball? I said,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I
we can
said, if
definitely
that's
relate
where
to
he
that.
fits in, that's where we're going to go. And these
Yeah.
will be other kids that he has seen in therapy, knows. And I said, that's where we're going to go. And I will drive 45 minutes.
For sure.
Where we live, it takes over half an hour just to get to Walmart. But we can relate to that because where we're at, we actually live on a peninsula that goes out to the Chesapeake Bay. So anything that has a group organization like that is going to be at least 45 minutes to actually an hour and a half away. And so, yeah, we're going to go that distance. And is that a little bit harder on our kids than somebody that lives right down the street? Maybe, but it's worth it for sure. So,
Luckily, we did find someone that is going to attempt private swimming lessons with Kason just right here in our town. So we are going to try that, and then hopefully that works out. If not, then I'll be driving an hour and a half up to Cape to try swimming lessons there. But we're gonna try to do private swimming lessons here.
Where do
that's
you live
awesome.
again, Candace?
We live in Southeast Missouri. I'm about 4 hours from you.
Okay. Okay.
I am about 10 minutes from the Tennessee line, about 15 minutes from the Arkansas line. And so, yeah, we're in the boot hill. We're in the little boot hill. And yeah, I go to Nashville for one of my big competitions. So we're used to going to Nashville for a lot.
Well, you got to let me know next time you come.
I will be there in July.
Okay, for sure. I do have one final thing to say, Susan, just because I'm always offering myself as a resource to parents who are getting new diagnoses. If you're in that space where you are getting a new diagnosis for your child, the most important thing is to just show up every day. You don't have to know all the answers at that very moment. The most important thing for you to do is just to show up each and every
Every
day
day.
for your
Yes.
child, and in whatever capacity that you're able to at that time, because that changes daily, right? That changes daily. So in whatever capacity you have at that moment to show up, that's the most important thing. Just show up every day, every day. They're going to feel that, they're going to need that. And you taking that step to show up means that you're going to advocate for your child, means that you're going to love on your child. It means that your child is going to flourish. So,
And not every day is going to be easy. And sometimes you got to
right.
show up as the biggest mama bear you can
Right.
to protect them babies. And you have to be the biggest voice in the room. And if that means laying out every single document that you have in your book, you lay it out and you tell them you're here for them. You are here
yeah.
for your baby, and you stand on your ground.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I experienced a lot of times where, especially with the school system, where we got pushed around, and I felt bullied a little bit, where they kind of locked us in a room till we signed their paper when she was in elementary school. So I pulled her out, homeschooled her for 7 years with the help of my dear friend Kathy. Um, and when we went to put her back in school, they were trying to put her in 10th grade when she was on a 7th grade level. And, they argued back and forth and acting like they're doing you this big favor. And I just looked at them and said, you can't do anything without my signature on that paper. And until it says what I want it to say, I'm not signing it. And sometimes you have to be that, you're not being ugly, you're not being mean, you're not being the bad guy, you're being the advocate, the representative for your child. And I think sometimes we have to be comfortable in that space where you're not there to make friends, you're there to help your kids. So,
yep. Coming to about signatures, I had to go in a meeting one time, and there was about 7 people against me. And I guess they thought, like, I let them all speak, and we were in Head Start, and that was the most awfulest time for me and Kason. He didn't like it. I didn't like it. We struggled, and I just walked in, and after they had to say what they had to say, I just lined the whole table, and I said, I'm pretty sure all your signatures are on this paper. And I know for a fact, y'all have not done one single thing that y'all have promised to do to protect my child. I said, so until you want to talk to me about what I'm doing, maybe we need to talk about what you're not doing.
All right. Well, I know it's getting kind of late, but I have enjoyed it, and I'm sure we could all sit and talk
Yep,
all day long.
Yep, all day.
Right.
But each and every one of
everyone.
you are so near and dear to me, and I can't express my gratitude and thanks for this project. Thank you for those who are watching. I just really appreciate you sharing this experience with us. The book is called Daring to Belong. Stories of Autism, Courage, and Connection. You can find it on Amazon, and there will also be a link to it on my website. Check out the comment section and the description section. I'm going to provide names and contact information for our authors that have come together. Look for our magazine coming out, Built for This, launching in June of 2026. We're very excited about that. And these wonderful authors will be sharing their information in there as well. So thank you for watching Puzzled Parents or listening if you're on that platform. And we'll look forward to being with you next time.